excuse me, I started out this presentation, my abstract, thinking something very differently than arrived at the end. But I'm a little bit nervous because I suspect a lot of you in this audience know more about this topic than I do, even though I spent, I don't know, 20 hours researching it. But so maybe you'll be able to fill in the gaps where I don't understand certain things. My thesis was that organized baseball banned in Canada for no good reason. No good reason to objectively. They thought they had good reasons. By the way, my abstract was wrong. There were 8 teams in Canada in 1990, not 7. As I said, I somehow forgot about the London AA club in the Eastern League. So there are 8 teams in 1990. But from 1992 to 2007, 10 teams moved out of Canada. Every Canadian affiliated team, the only team that was remaining was a short season A club. They moved into Vancouver to replace the Vancouver AAA club, which in its last year in Vancouver won the World Series, or won the AAA championship, PCL championship and the World Series, and Oakland, which was their parent, won Organization of the Year, and then they left. So this tells you where, how much sentiment there is in baseball. Anyway, let me get started here because I don't want to run too long. So this is my table here of these teams in 1990, also the ones that came or moved to Canada in the 90s, and what happened to them. I mean, the key elements, most of you probably know these teams, are their first year and their last year, and their ballpark. Because what I learned very quickly is the ballpark's a critical factor. Let's see, the ballpark, the age of the ballpark, I think, is a critical factor here, driving virtually all its relocations. On the right-hand side, I have a column that says new park. That means when they moved, did they get a new ballpark? And 8 of the 10 did. One of them didn't, which was Medicine Hat, I'm sorry. They moved to Helena. And one of them, it's sort of unclear because there was a new park, but it was 5 years later from Lethbridge to Missoula. I suspect that wasn't known when Lethbridge relocated. 5 years is a long time. I don't think that was known. Maybe there wasn't a promise that they would build a new ballpark. But 8 of them either moved to a new ballpark that was waiting for them, or moved to a ballpark like Round Rock, which was 5 years old, but considered to be one of the best facilities in the minors. Or we're going to get a new ballpark like Hamilton. Like Hamilton moved to Glens Falls, which is an older AA market, spent 1 year there, and then hopped to Sussex County, New Jersey, where they got a new ballpark, which at that time was considered to be a very classy facility for low Class A. London left Labatt Park and went to Trenton, New Jersey, waterfront park, which was a huge hit at the time. I mean, it was a big thing in New Jersey. The mayor was there, the governor was there, and while Trenton isn't really a large city, it's in the middle of the megalopolis. So Trenton is like the dividing line between New York City and Philadelphia. New York City Metro having 20 million plus people, and the Philadelphia Metro having 6 million plus people. So it was a huge market, and was a big hit, and should still have a AA team. So I mean, this really, I mean, told me the story here. It's almost, in almost every case, you're looking at a new ballpark that drove the relocation. Now, in Canada, we had 2 clubs that had relatively new ballparks when they relocated. Edmonton, they had Telus Field in 1995, so it was only 9 years old. I think of 9 years in the life of a ballpark as relatively new, but in those days, 9 years was like 2/3 of the lifespan of a ballpark. I concluded years ago that when you build a minor league park, you should figure a 15-year lifespan, even though they figure 20 or 25 or 30 years, because there are parks that serve that. But within 10 years, virtually every minor league team comes back saying, we need a new park, or we need a lot of money to upgrade this park to make it, to keep us here. Now, if they don't get the money to upgrade, or they don't get a promise to build a new ballpark, they don't move immediately, because they can't generally. It'll take them 2, 3, 4 years to find a new place to move to, or they'll make another attempt to raid the public treasury to get their ballpark renovated and improved. But pretty much within 10 years, they're saying it's outmoded, we need help. And in the US, that means municipal help. Cities, or if the city can't afford it, the county, and if the county can't afford it, or they can't afford the whole demand, the whole extortion demand, then the state chips in. Like when, when Welland moved to Erie, the stadium in Erie was built pretty much by the state. Erie was not a wealthy city. I didn't look to see if Erie contributed anything, but it was basically state of Pennsylvania money. And what I can tell is that basically the cities and provinces in Canada weren't willing to put up money to support minor league baseball. And I'm not blaming them, because I don't think in the US we should be squandering taxpayers' dollars to support rich men who own these teams. But that's the way it goes. In the US, we throw literally billions of dollars. If you've been following the Buffalo NFL saga, I think the state subsidy is now calculated at $800 million, and it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up more than that, to build a new stadium for the Buffalo NFL team, which is owned by billionaires, and probably, I don't know what the current worth is, but when Ralph Wilson died, and he sold it and put it in a charity, a charitable trust, the value was 1.2 billion, and that was 10 years ago or something like that. So I mean, this is obscene that people will spend hundreds of millions of dollars to support billionaires. Here is a lineup in the 2000s. You can see the migration had already was underway. And Vancouver, I showed it there not because they hadn't left. They did leave after '99, but I showed what the replacements were at Nat Daily. And it's basically the continuation of a trend. The trend started in the 90s after Camden Yards was built. You don't think of Camden Yards affecting minor league baseball, at least I don't think most people do, but it really did. The lesson at Camden Yards was you can build a cool little ballpark, preferably on a river or on a lake front, and you can build it downtown, and you can get credit for revitalizing the city or the central business district, and the city, county, state will subsidize it, and you get the credit, and you also make money because you're not investing much, if anything at all, in the ballpark, and you're going to see a big boost in attendance, and everyone's going to love you. So I blame this on Camden Yards because it created a demand for miniature Camden Yards at the minors. You know, the standard red brick exterior, exposed structural steel. Early on, they were almost all dark green, like in Camden Yards. Later, they started varying the colors, and located preferably in the downtown area, or like I said, on a river or a lake. I thought for a second, maybe this isn't just baseball, maybe it's a hockey problem, and I am not a hockey expert, but I did look at the NHL relocations and was surprised to learn that because of the two relocations in the US, but two relocations from the US to Canada, we have no net loss of NHL teams. Now, you probably all knew that, but I didn't know that. I did not look at minor league hockey, which is well beyond my area of expertise, and I don't think minor league hockey, you can correct me, I don't think minor league hockey there's anything as prominent as AAA baseball in the sense of it being as big an operation. Does anyone disagree with that?
Yes.
To me, the minor, to me, the minor league hockey is like more like AA or Class A. It's not at the level of AAA in terms of the size of the business. So this surprised me, probably because I don't follow hockey. Here we have the net result. So we now have only the Blue Jays as a major league team in Canada, whereas we have here 5 NHL franchises stayed put, including in smaller markets like Ottawa. And then we have the Canadians who, I don't know, this is, I suppose, expressing sort of elitist attitude. To me, a short season A club doesn't matter. It matters to a small town in a city the size of Vancouver's, population 2.64 million, putting a short season A club in there, and now you have a high A club since the reorganization of the minors have a high A club. That's like an insult. That should be a AAA city at the minimum, and of course, 25 years ago, Vancouver was thought to ultimately be getting a major league expansion team. The Mariners, of course, bought that. Here is the map of NHL franchises. To me, that should be a map of AAA franchises as well. And and or major league granted. There should be a major league team in Montreal, and there should be at least AAA teams in every other of one of those NHL cities. Now I'm going to look at each city individually. This is Hamilton was the first one to leave Canada. That's Bernie Arbor Stadium, and I'm including pictures of the stadiums so we can see how not one of these stadiums looks like the modern Camden Yards copy ballparks. I didn't look up the construction costs of these. I had already invested enough time in a half-hour presentation. It would be another half-hour to hour presentation to do it. But it's clear that these were built to the old standard, the old pre-Camden Yards standard, where you built a ballpark and you put the fans in there, and you didn't spend an ungodly amount of money gold plating it, and the fans came because they wanted to watch baseball. They didn't come because the ballpark was like a carnival center. So Bernie Arbor, you can see the bare bones, mostly bleacher seats, very few chairs. Hamilton, what I did in all these charts is look at the league attendance average, subtracted the city I'm looking at, subtract Hamilton, then do the Hamilton versus the league average, and Hamilton versus the league average without Hamilton. You can see Hamilton's attendance was pretty good. I mean, for a New York Penn League team, which is pretty low, that's a pretty good attendance. It clearly wasn't moved out because the attendance was poor. It was moved for other reasons. Here we have Labatt Park, beautiful Labatt Park, but obviously not up to the standards of what they expect and what a waterfront park in Trenton, in the capital of New Jersey, which has tons of money to throw at it, would do. Now, the attendance at Labatt Park in London was quite good until the year before they left, which I interpret as everyone knew they were leaving. If I had more time, I would do the research to pin down exactly when the rumors started swirling or someone mentioned relocation, because as soon as that happens and it's in the media, attendance always takes a nosedive. I know that from studying major league relocations. But again, I don't see any evidence that London didn't deserve an Eastern League AA franchise. Plus, I love Labatt Park. Okay, so here's Welland, another one. This is a bare bones, low minors, kind of facility. But Welland, the attendance was mediocre. It wasn't great. In these low-level leagues, I don't see that kind of attendance gap as fatal. It's the kind of thing where if you marketed better or did more promotions, you could probably pump it up to average or close to average. But it was a very bare bones sort of 1980s ballpark, and they left. That's not a great picture. I presume it looked better than that when it was in operation, but that does show you how bare bones these parks were. Lethbridge, again, low-level ballpark. To me, no evidence that the attendance was inadequate, and it was used for other reasons. Here we have St. Catharines. Again, this was the 1980s style, where you build a grandstand, you put a few seats in behind home plate and behind the dugouts. Most people are sitting in bleachers, some with backs, most not. No roof or a very small roof, so everyone's in the hot sun. On a hot summer day, you're in a frying pan, and if it's raining or drizzling, you're in the rain. But that was a standard in the 80s and before, and that standard used to be good enough to go see a minor league game, and no longer was by the mid-90s. Now, St. Catharines attendance wasn't very good to start. By the way, these attendance figures are only for the previous 5 years for relocation. I didn't try to go back and look at attendance trends before that, because that would sort of take away the focus on relocation. So St. Catharines, by looking at their attendance, you could justify moving them. Here we have Vancouver and Nat Bailey, which was one of my favorite places ever to see a ball game. I went there in 1999 when I was in Seattle for a film festival, and I just loved the field and I loved the atmosphere. And of course, that was its last year in AAA. So here we have Nat Bailey attendance. I'm presuming when it takes a dive from 93 to 75, that's because people knew they were leaving. In the case of the Canadiens, a U.S. owner had bought the club, I think, in 97, and so people probably either knew or suspected it was going to be moved. But as I said, this is criminal that you don't have at least a AAA team in Vancouver. Here we have Athletic Park. Again, this I believe is the newer, spiffed up one, so not representative of the older one they moved out of Medicine Hat, but I didn't find an old picture. Medicine Hat, again, like St. Catherine's, you could justify moving out based on attendance. Although, again, I think the low-level minors, attendance isn't really such an issue. Or at least, maybe it wasn't. Back in the 80s, a friend of mine owned a minor league team, said it was the era when anyone with a positive balance in their checkbook could own a minor league club. And he owned an Eastern League club. It was the Yankees Farm Club. And he said, I bought it for almost nothing. I sold it for almost nothing. It was before the inflation in minor league franchise venues. Here we have Calgary. This is, one of the sort of clamshell type designs with a roof over the grandstand, but over part of the grandstand. Not really attractive. On the other hand, the Diamond in Richmond, which you all might have seen pictures of in the 1990s, was considered one of the best minor league ballparks in existence. It was on the cover of the Baseball America minor league ballpark calendar one year, and it had that clamshell design. It was, although it was concrete all the way, including up to the roof, and yet within 10 years it was the Braves, I believe the Braves, were trying to abandon it. They eventually did abandon it, and then after they got a Double-A club instead, and then the Double-A club was immediately trying to get into a ballpark because it was considered obsolete. So Calgary, I think, is one of these clubs where, depending upon what the rumors were about whether it was going to be relocated, how well it was run, a lot depends on management, how smart they are at running it, how good their promotions are, how widely they market it, whether the community perceives them to be interlopers if they're not local, or whether the community perceives them to be invested in town. I think Calgary is one of these ones that's on the bubble there. 80% is not fatal if that's a low point. I didn't try to tie this to the quality of the prospects. Of course, if you're in a good organization loaded with top prospects, you're going to have more interest than if you're in a bad organization with a bunch of roster filler. Edmonton, this is the one that Edmonton and Ottawa puzzled me, because Edmonton got a new ballpark, Telus Field, in 1995, and Edmonton attendance in 2000, 2001, even 2002 was perfectly credible, and a new ballpark should have saved them, I would think. When I look at the picture of Telus Field, though, it doesn't look to me like a post-Camden Yards ballpark. It's not quite the really bare bones 1980s minor league field, but it's not clear. It's clearly not a retro, chic, fan-friendly, wide concourse. We're going to separate you from your wallet when you walk in the door with all these expensive attractions. Of course, I would call them distractions from the actual game. As my friend who owned the Eastern League Club said, we were always selling sizzle, not the steak. Link Stadium, this is one that really puzzled me, and I haven't figured it out yet. As you probably know, the Lynx came into the International League and were a huge hit. Their attendance was boffo the first few years, and yet by 2003, so that's 10 years after they moved to Ottawa, they're a basket case. And I remember that period where everyone was just trying to figure out when is the International League going to get out of Ottawa. And they changed affiliations with the Phillies, because the Phillies wanted to get out of Scranton Wilkes-Barre, but the ballpark in Allentown, Lehigh Valley hadn't been built yet, and it was just a complete disaster. And since Link Stadium originally was Stade Ottawa, or Ottawa Stadium, was new in '93, I just don't understand what happened with the market and with the fan base, and maybe somebody here can explain that to me after the presentation. This is something I threw in here. I have heard over and over again in the U.S. That the Canadian dollar was a problem with baseball, keeping baseball in Canada, because supposedly the teams take in Canadian dollars in revenue but spend American dollars, and that's a bunch of happy horse shit. I mean, first of all, on the major league level, for the Expos, it was a factor, because they have to pay their players in American dollars and their top executives. But they also get distributions from the Central Fund for international marketing rights and national TV rights and memorabilia sales and all sorts of licensing. Those distributions from the Central Fund are in U.S. dollars. And of course, their expenses much of their expenses, except for the players and the top executives who have to be paid comparable salaries in the U.S., are in Canadian dollars. The game day staff is Canadian dollars. Their vendors, all the stuff they do there is in Canadian dollars. And so it was always sort of a red herring when they were invoking with the minor league. There's no justification because minor league clubs don't get central fund distribution. They get almost nothing from, well, they got almost nothing from the National Association office in St. Petersburg. There was no centralized stuff. And they almost have, no media rights in most cases. So it's really game day sales. And their players and their managers and coaches and a lot of their equipment, if not all of it, and their trainers, that's all paid for by the major league team. So maybe they have to get paid U.S. wages, but they're not getting paid by the club owner. So essentially the club owner is taking in Canadian dollars and spending Canadian dollars. So I'm not clear how many people invoke this for the minor league teams, but I know it was talked about a lot, so I did take a look, and the thing that surprised me was how often, or how almost all this period, this is almost a 50-year period, the Canadian dollar was worth less than the American dollar. Even though I live in Detroit now, and lived in Michigan in the 70s and 80s, I didn't realize how infrequently the Canadian dollar was above par with the US dollar. You guys probably understand that if you go to the US, right? I mean, I know it's been really strong lately, but I looked at this 50-year history and I go, wow, that's amazing to me. Okay, so here's what I say are the real reasons. It's all about the Benjamins. And in the US, a Benjamin $100 bill, Ben Franklin portrait, in case anyone doesn't know that. It's sort of a trite phrase, but it's really the public Benjamins. It's really the willingness of city, county, and state governments to subsidize the new ballparks and just throw boatloads of money at these minor league operators. When minor league teams went from just being like eking out a small profit, you could buy them for a small amount of money, to having values in the tens of millions of dollars, especially AAA clubs. There's no reason to subsidize these guys. My argument would be you want a new ballpark, build it yourself. Except that if you tell them that, they'll leave town. And there's always some other city, some other county, some other state willing to build them a new ballpark. And then within 10 years, you're threatening to leave there because it's not good enough anymore. That to me is the real lesson, is that Camden Yards really greatly ratcheted up expectations for what a minor league ballpark should look like. And essentially, instantly, all those parks had been built in the 80s. There was a huge number of them. All of them were obsolete. And even some of the ones built in the 90s, like I showed. And if your city, county, or state was willing to subsidize a new ballpark or really extensive renovation of the existing park, you could draw a team from out of town if you didn't have one. Or if your team left town because you wouldn't build a new ballpark, you'd then do it after they leave and you pull a team from somewhere else. I looked at some other reasons that I've heard people talk about. This trend to bring farm clubs closer to their parents, that really was ancillary. It had started in the 90s. Clubs no longer the Pirates no longer wanted their AAA club in Hawaii, and the Phillies didn't want their AAA club in Portland on the West Coast. They wanted the teams there where the executives and their player development people go see them quickly. They also wanted to use their AAA club as a taxi squad, which has gone to ridiculous dimensions now in the last 5 years, just a taxi squad. And back then, they were just starting to call up players from AA, top prospects. Back then, before that, guys didn't get called up from AA. They'd have to go to AAA and spend some time. But all of a sudden, they started to call up guys from AA. And so now they wanted their AAA and AA clubs close in where they could see them quickly without spending 2 days on the road. And they could call these guys up for tonight's game or tomorrow's game. And I think that's a terrible trend. It destroys integrity of the minor league pennant races. It hobbles the minor league owners. In the 90s, the Phillies, which were treated their farm system terribly, the Phillies' attitude was, you exist to service us, we pay your bills, screw you. So Scranton Wilkes-Barre, I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania, so I'm very familiar with it. They had a team that was going for the IL, for the division lead, and they would have it was something to win the Governor's Cup, the IL. So they had a cleanup hitter named Tom Marsh, an outfielder. He was not a major leaguer. He spent a little bit of time in the majors. In the middle of their pennant race, the Phillies, who were going nowhere, called him up to the majors to sit on the bench for a week. I think in the first week he got into 2 games, and when people in Scranton complained, like, you don't need him. It's not like you're on the edge of winning the National League East, and he's our cleanup hitter. Why don't you leave him with us? The Phillies said, basically what I said, screw you. We don't care what you think. We don't care about your pennant race. We don't care about you. And so the Phillies and Scranton had a very bad relationship after that, until the Phillies could get to Lehigh Valley. One thing that is, I think, clear is that Major League Baseball and minor league baseball, the people who control the attitude and the general policies, they thought that the evidence of attendance was people in Canada wouldn't support baseball. I mean, their attitude is hockey is a national game, they don't care about baseball. They don't appreciate the deep roots baseball has in Canada and how, I think, important baseball was in Canada up through, I would say, the decline of the Expos. And so they said, well, these Canadian clubs aren't drawing, it's Canada's problem, as opposed to either the ballpark's the problem, the operator, the owner is the problem, the marketing is the problem. It's not generalized. In the US, when a city or a team is not drawing well, they just say, well, you got a bad owner, bad ballpark, whatever, and you can either fix it with a new ballpark or spending more money, or you can market it better, or you can move somewhere else. They didn't take that attitude in Canada. It was time to leave. And then I think it's hard to find evidence of this, but to me, I've heard so many people talk about this, is like this attitude that baseball is the United States game. Well, our game too, right? Two is the operative word on that cover. They think of baseball as the American game, the national game, the former national pastime, now called America's pastime. And they don't think of that remotely in that way in Canada. And I think at a subconscious level, in most cases, and at a conscious level in some cases, that really helped them say, well, it doesn't matter if Canada has any affiliated baseball teams because they don't care about baseball. What it really was is American baseball executives didn't care about baseball in Canada, not that Canadians didn't care about baseball. There's my sources. I want to say that in this case, the websites aren't as helpful as the books. I know everyone now wants to look on the web and they think Baseball Reference is a great website. Has everything, but it doesn't. So the Baseball America Encyclopedia, the last edition, it won't ever be published again. And the Baseball America Directories and Almanacs have much information that's not on Baseball Reference or really anywhere on the web, including year-by-year attendance, including year-by-year managers, and including annual year review essays in Baseball America telling you about what happened at the PCL that year. So the guts of this presentation came from the minor league encyclopedias and the minor league, the Baseball America Directories and Almanacs, aside from my existing ideas and biases from being old enough to live through this. Also, I had my own ballpark database, which now belongs to Sports Reference, Baseball Reference, and I use that for the Montreal Expos comparison. I couldn't resist throwing in Montreal with that chart, even though I shouldn't have. Lloyd Kern, a friend of mine, as a guy who owned the Eastern League Club, he's still in touch with so many minor league operators and league presidents that he's always helpful when I want something. The methods, to me, almost all of this comes from just digging, and it completely turned me around from my original thesis. And that's it. If you want to get a hold of me, you want to tell me where I'm wrong, tell me something I missed, explain to me about the links or about anything else I didn't understand, you can reach me there.